The Rites of Eleusis, Their Origin and Meaning by Aleister Crowley. The Rites of Eleusis. Among the various accounts that have appeared of the character of the Rites of Eleusis, so called, I find that very few people seem to understand intellectually what they were all about. It will be as well, therefore, if I make here a plain statement as to the exact nature of the rites. The ceremonies developed from very rude beginnings. The first one was in this wise. I happened to have a few friends in my room in the evening, among them the celebrated Australian violinist, Miss Lila Waddell. It struck me that we might pass the time by a sort of artistic dialogue. I read a piece of poetry from one of the great classics, and she replied with a piece of music suggested by my reading. I retorted with another poem, and the evening developed into a regular controversy. The others were intensely interested in this strange conflict, and in the silence of the room, spiritual enthusiasm took hold of us so acutely that we were all intensely uplifted to the point, in some cases, of actual ecstasy, an intoxication of the same kind as that experienced by an assistant at the celebration of the Mass or the performance of Parsifal, but stronger because of its naturalness and primitiveness. It was subsequently decided to try and tune everybody up to some definite prearranged emotion, and we strung together a rough ceremony in honor of Artemis. This was so successful that it even impressed persons who had always been complete skeptics and scoffers. Having been of help in private, we endeavored to reproduce the effects in public with greater elaboration. How to write rites right. With regard to the genius of the rites of Eleusis, I must explain that they did not spring fully armed from my brain, Minerva-like. The actual form which my ideas took was simply a question of convenience and compromise. It was necessary to have a series of some sort, and 7 seemed to be about the right number. If you were going to get them done before people went away for Christmas, I might have chosen another sort of deities, but I thought that those associated with the days of the week would make it easier for everybody, and it certainly made it very much easier for me because the correspondences of color, form, idea, number, and so on of the planets had been so very well worked out. Of the way in which the rituals were constructed, I must say a few words. Let us put ourselves in the position of the dramatist. Take, for example, the first ritual, that of Saturn, working on tradition just as Wagner did when he took the Old Norse saga for his world drama. We found Saturn as a black, melancholy god, the devourer of his children. Ideas of night, death, black hellebore, lead cypress, tombs, deadly nightshade, all these things have a necessary connection with Saturn in the mind of anyone who has read the classics. The first condition of this rite is, then, to make this temple a kind of symbolic representation of the sphere of Saturn. So the representative of Saturn wears the black robe. The time is declared to be midnight, though as a matter of fact, it is only 20 minutes past 8. This is an ordinary theatrical convention, and Masons will think of certain analogies in their own orgies. If the brethren are fed, it is on the corpses of their children, as Saturn fed on his. If they drink, it is poppy heads infused in blood. Symbols of sleep and death, Saturn further represents the earth, the plane of matter, humanity bounded by old age and death, humanity blindly groping after illumination and failing to get it. The truth behind the veil. It is, then, the primitive darkness of humanity that is represented in this ritual. Therefore, we have the despairing cry, there is no God. And as a logical result, the suicide of the high priest, for there cannot be a priest without a god. It is the blackness of uttermost despair, and so the ritual ends. It is only in the second rite, the rite of Jupiter, who is etymologically and actually identical with the Hebrew Jehovah, that light breaks. But even in that rite, when the supreme power is declared, he is too exalted for anyone to approach him. It is only by the work of the divine spirit that he's made manifest, and this manifestation only takes place in the God-man, whom some call Iacchus and others Jesus. Again, an etymological and mystical identity. The doctrine appears to me to differ from the orthodox doctrine of Christianity in one point only. It is not sectarian. I do not require Mr. John M. Robertson to tell me that the story of the crucifixion is merely a mystery play adapted from the rites of Mithras, the rite being symbolical, a spiritual truth. All nations that possess knowledge of spiritual things will have incorporated it in their rites under some name or other. The deadness of dogma. In my interpretation, if my interpretation has been erroneous, let me be shown my error, and I will repent. But no sensible person can maintain for a moment that my interpretation is unserious or irreverent. And my chief defense, my counterattack, is that the orthodox methods of inculcating the doctrine in question have been so purely dogmatic and dull that they have lost all vital force. Without art, truth becomes falsehood. Imagine anyone taking the teachings of the blue bird and pounding them into a creed and writing dull sermons about them. The unfortunate children who had to learn them would begin to hate Maeterlinck bitterly. But let the sublime truth of Christianity be once again clothed round by sweet art, the spacious warm heaven of her imminent wings, and there will be that true revival of religious life that everyone is blindly seeking. And now in my channel, if we've talked about bluebird, we don't mean the same bluebird. We mean the Temple of Blood bluebird, not I don't know what he means by the bluebird. Is it a book, or are they talking about some term for Gabriel or something, right? And people would say maybe he is irreverent because he doesn't take the forms and whatnot of the so-called deities too literally, right? But he gets into it in this idea that, okay, there's these modes or aspects of divinity, and we're playing this out in this traditional way. And because there's been traditional aspects associated with it, then, these things can come about. When I work my seasonals, I also use color coding and stuff like this. And I try to connect very deliberately to these traditions. Now, do I have to believe all the same things that they do? I certainly don't think that the entity, some of the entity, we're taking on roles, like, like in the Truth Behind the Veil section. I mean, you literally don't think you're the new Jesus, but you're taking on a mystical identity towards the purpose. You're identifying with the myth. And when it comes to the myths, well, the myths are either directly true, and they were certainly presented as if they were directly true. And in general, people thought their mythologies were directly true. But very often, because of priestcraft or something else, you ended up, it not being directly true, but it's symbolically true. See, that's the point. They're referencing truths, even if something's gotten twisted along the way. And that's what one needs to find out. And by primitiveness, we mean, without this trimming down the edges of, civilization. That's why the ego is a square or a cube on the diagrams, because it's the mental construction of consciousness. It's not quite the thing, but it's the reference. It's our functional use of the whole thing. And this is the sort of thing that I would used to do. Is you say stuff, people respond in one way or another, and that's what I'm trying to do with content on my channel. I'm trying to get people to respond in their own way. Fine, keep it to yourself, if that's what you're going to do. But I definitely have put that out there for you to get in and have your own experience. And just because some of it doesn't align with my experience, and I try to bring up some of that in the middle of the rituals, like I'm experiencing this, and in person, people would say, "Oh yes, over here," and it's like, "Oh, dude, I did," and sometimes you make it so you don't know, and it turns out you're experiencing the same thing in the same place, even though like from different sides of the circle or whatever, you're experiencing something different. And remember that magic is an art and a science.